Hey guys, Bellido here from GoFormat.com with this is my new series, the improvement series, and how to get better at Go format from my perspective. And I I'm gonna teach a lot of stuff that I implement during the game and my mindset uh, to help intermediate players get to the next level, and then the advanced players get to the upper echelon of Go format players. So the first video today is how to play against Chaos Warrior, how to play against aggro decks, and that game plan as a whole. And I'm not sure if it's gonna be cut up into two videos. There's a lot to go over, but yeah, I'm just gonna jump into it. Hopefully, I'm a little more structured in my next set of improvement videos. But I was just trying to get this out for the beginning of the month for the Patreon. So yeah, let's start looking at. We'll start with this is Moxie's deck. I'm gonna go with Moxie and Lucas. These are the two premier. I call this season two of GOAT format for me. Two premier warrior players right now, and Moxie's and Lucas, some of the best players right now in the game, and they both run very similar decks. They're actually only off by one card. This is Moxie's Chaos Warrior deck. It's always been popular. It's just the main deck has changed quite a bit from when it was kind of getting popular last format with, or last season with Geist. And one of the biggest omissions is Book of Moon for, I guess it's Trap Dust Shoots. I can't remember what it really is. It's Trap Dust Shoots and maybe main deck Sakus, but I think that was in there before. And if you look at the difference between Moxie's and Lucas's deck is one extra skill dark for Moxie's versus the Dust Tornado. But the side decks seem to be kind of similar. I guess it's depending on the tournament that you're in. But yeah, it's. I guess the video is not about this deck, it's about how to beat this deck. And I'm going to talk from the Chaos control and Gold control, and I guess to a certain degree the Chaos Turbo perspective. And this is the deck that I currently run right now. If I were to enter a tournament, this is the Chaos Control build that I would probably have. It looks very, very similar to my Worlds deck, just minus a Dust Tornado for a Saku, obviously because I feel Warrior is the most popular deck amongst the field right now. And I cut a Mimic for a Kaiku, only because it's another beater and it's a card that I wanted to have two of between my main and my side. And it's really choosing between the Azure Priest or the Kaiku right now. And I think Kaiku just gets a little bit more mileage in the current metagame since there's not as much Chaos Control. Chaos Control and Gold Control decks. So let's talk about Chaos Warrior a bit. So Chaos Warrior obviously is super powerful deck, and there's no secret to its strategy. It's linear, right? It's linear in the sense where all of its advantage is generated from plus ones um, in the battle phase. Outside of cards like a big heavy storm, Don Zalug is maybe that again the plus ones come from the battle phase, where it's generally just trying to lock you out with Kaiku, trying to negate your flips with Blade Knight, trying to stop any of your answers with Solemn. Anytime you try to come over the top, Sakaretsu armor, and before you can make any plays, Dust Shoot, right? It's an anti-meta-ish type of deck where it just tries to have answers for you before you can even play. And naturally that sounds like the best deck, but anti-meta has been there in almost every format of the game. I think it's even alive now in current, but there's ways to beat this deck, and it's the strategies. So the linear strategy in Chaos Warrior, although it's very strong, makes it very, very predictable on what they can do. You can basically count their plays out and figure out, okay, this is their only answer for here, for this scenario. And their backup plays are kind of just premature call chaos monsters. Um, and one of the it's obviously its main strength is game one, right? Game one, um, there's so many weak cards in the chaos control deck and chaos turbo that are very very yeah, I guess very very weak to the chaos warrior strategy. We have a lot of stuff where we thrive in the slower game, right? In games that take a little bit of time to develop your position, where Chaos Warriors immediately right away putting pressure. So one of the first things you always have to understand is the weaknesses in your deck, and the number one weakness is the speed, right? You're a slower paced deck, and they'll definitely stop you from getting going, right? The chances that they don't have a first turn Blade Knight level 2 Rhoda Nobleman to answer your flips are very, very low. It doesn't come up often that they don't have an answer for it, but 1 in 6 cards with, I think they have tons of ways to get there. It's tough, right? So the other thing is knowing the weakness. Again, knowing the weaknesses in your deck is you do have dead cards in this matchup, and Nobleman across out. The only times they'll be live is if you're probably already ahead and they're setting monsters and you kept your knock. So one of the things that I like to make sure that I do if I draw knock is know the small intricacies with Nobleman, right? So Nobleman works when a monster is obviously face down. The ways to force that out, one, obviously Tsukiyomi. But think of the other ways to force that out. You can force it through Snatch. You can force it through Chaos Circling a monster. You can force it through them booking their. Well, they don't play book now anymore, but if they. Um, some decks do play book. Book, if they use book as protection, maybe on a battle trap, you have knock live there too. So it's just knowing you still can make it live. Just it is obviously a dead draw in the beginning and it's a terrible top deck, but you have to put yourself into positions where you can make them live. Just know the small intricacies where you know what, if this Nobleman could be live and I could make it a backup plan. So that goes on to my second point is backup plans. Is whenever you make a play, I'm going to show I have a few replays loaded up where backup plans have to be there when you're playing against Chaos Warrior. You have to make sure that if you're making a play, you have a follow up play because you know it's going to be answered regardless. So it's choosing the order of operations of which play you want to make first, and identifying which play is broken up more on their turn, because all they can really do to break up is to stop your play is Solemn Judgment and MST, and then they're just going to try and answer you the next turn, or obviously they're going to try and dust shoot you before to prevent anything from happening. So let me see what else I have here. Trying not to set bluffs against this deck, right? Like obviously setting Nobleman to pretend it's a trap. They're probably going to attack through it anyways, and it just makes cards like, for example, if you have a if you're so you sometimes you put on a clock really early and you can't wait for Graceful Thunder Dragon, Graceful Sinister. You have to Graceful, almost shotgun Graceful when you get it. If you're behind or if you need to find um, answers and you don't want to be stuck with a set, you set your Nobleman just because you're hoping to prevent an attack and they attacked anyways, right? So that's a big thing, trying not to set bluffs. Every dead card is kind of could be useful. You could find use in it in Regeki Break, in Tribe, and in Graceful, right? The discards. And you can also keep your hand a little bit bigger when they hit with Dawn, making the probability of hitting one of your better cards less. Um, One of the other big things is trying not to lose your sinister early. Like in a lot of games, you'll notice that I'll sacrifice faiths, I'll sacrifice decos, I'll sacrifice mimics, even like maybe a Sangan if I already have sinister to a nobleman, because sinister becomes obviously there's so much synergy with sinister in this deck, but when you're if you eventually make it to the late game or even the mid game, a bit later into the mid game when you're about to get into the late game, the one for one, it becomes a blocker, and you need it so much because Chaos Warrior tends to outside of Dust Shoot, they top deck very very well, right? They top deck answers for almost anything, right? A Rhoda top deck is crazy because it has access to whatever it needs. Um, but you always want to try and stay one monster ahead on the board. So if you notice a lot of my gameplays, I will do stuff where I will let a bunch of goats die, and then finally, if I have one goat left, just keep that there. Just normal. To me that's like just standard in my mindset. It's just trying to stay up on the summon, regardless of um, your position, right? One of the other big things again, so this is a lot of game one we're talking about. A lot of game one is you have to do your best to utilize the plus one machines in Heavy Storm, Mirror Force, and Torrential. Like I'll do a lot of stuff where I'll soak up damage just to see if he can put more on the field so I could just maybe get that plus one out there. And again with the Heavy Storm, same thing. Trying not to overcommit. Like again, when you set bluffs, you make your Heavy Storm much worse. So making reads against this against Chaos Warrior is actually fairly easy for me. So with my experience, it's fairly easy only because the strategy is so linear, and it's if they don't answer this, you can kind of piece together what they have in player reaction. Like a lot of stuff is picking up player tendencies, but just knowing that hey, if they didn't stop this and they could have, um, they probably don't have it. And a lot of the things are like, so let's say turn one is summon Blade Knight, and maybe it's better if I go into a duel for this. So that's gonna be a refresh. So if they go turn one, summon a Blade Knight to hit your face down, but then next turn they summon a Kaiku for pressure and they have back rows. So it's very easy to indicate, okay, there's definitely at least a Solemn to negate there. But the fact that he's summoning a Kaiku beside a Blade Knight means he already has another answer for flip effects. So that's just small stuff to keep in mind, right? And a lot of people don't really process that thought where, okay, if he's doing this, that means he definitely has an answer if I were to set another card, if I were to do this. So again, small stuff. It's piecing all the small things together that help you win game one. I'm if you're able to steal game one with Chaos Control or Chaos Turbo or Go Control, amazing. I feel like if I have to look at all the game ones that I've won against Chaos Warrior, but I'm pretty sure I've won every match that I've won game one. Um, in the this might be this is from my perspective is I definitely don't like to be in the oversimplified. I'm not the oversimplified, the overcomplicated game states where each player has more than 5, 6 cards in hand and multiple sets in the back row. Only because your way to get through that, it's easier for them to actually kill you through there because they could push through all your stuff with their solemns. But when you try to kill them, you only have one heavy storm to their 3 solemns or 2 solemns, and your faith will probably not connect. Like your faith will get answered to a level 2, could get answered, it could have got knocked early. So when you get into those overcomplicated game states, it makes it very difficult because your back row removal is limited to 3, where they can have answers for that and then still have more back rows, and you can't fight through. You don't have enough firepower to fight through it. So I like to stay in, I call it the mid range, where you're kind of in this 3 cards in hand, which is very often. So that's kind of what happens often against the Chaos Warrior or aggro matchup, is you're in the mid range often, but you don't want to stall too long to, like, when you're not applying pressure, you letting them draw free cards. It's makes your matchup very, very difficult because, again, unless you had the perfect set of cards, you won't be able to break through that field after. So that's something that just I've experienced many, many times in this matchup. And when you're in the mid range, it is. I hope you guys aren't bored just staring at this. But when you're in the mid range, it makes it easier to make reads because um, if you can put them on a clock with resources, you know they have to play stuff because they're kind of drawing. They don't have answers already, so they're forced to make this play. And you can piece together reads, and this card right here is one of the stronger cards against the 3 decks, against Control, Turbo, and Goat, because they don't need to make reads. They know what you have and they know your answers. So if you can start to play around Dust Shoot, which I try to do as much as I can in my power to play around Dust Shoot, because it makes it a game for them, right? It makes it a guessing game still. They still have to piece together what I'm doing, and it's harder to do that with Chaos Warrior, where you're just like, here's what I got, you got to answer it, versus, oh, I know what you got, or versus them having to read what you got based off the plays that you made. The late game is very, so the late game could either be one of two things. Normally it's pretty good for chaos control. If you, by late game, if you get them top in a top decking more, if it's one-on-one, this deck top deck's much better than your deck, than the 3 chaos decks outside of Dust Shoot. But if you can grind them, so most of the times you win, you grind them down to no cards and you have 2-3 cards, 4 cards, you're up. But if you're in a top deck battle, that becomes very, very difficult, because again, they're a draw. Like a Rhoda is anything. If you set a Flit, it's a Blade Knight. If you have a Spy or something, it's Grandmaster, or it's Dawn if you kept the card in hand, if you had a dead Chaos Monster. So yeah, it's tough when you're going 1-for-1 on top deck. That's why, again, I dial back to Sinister being super, super important, and not losing it to Nobleman or even Kaiku in the graveyard, or Kaiku attacking when it's in the graveyard. Let me just see what else I have. Oh, and again, so sorry, looking at the newer versions of the deck is knowing your strengths against this deck. I know we talk about our weaknesses, but knowing your strength, and one of the strengths in this deck is obviously your Chaos Monsters, which are prepared for, but how much stronger Thousand Eyes Restrict is now, because Thousand Eyes' outs only are, so Exile, since they no longer play Book of Moon, Tribe, Exiled Force, and 2 Rhodas, and the Chaos Monsters. So that's far less than what they used to have. They used to be on triple book and then double book, and then having extra ways to get through it. So a Thousand Eyes Restrict can definitely stall you some time to build up your resources, but you don't want them to build too far ahead too, right? And one of the big things is maximizing Scapegoat, using your damage, using your life points as a way to generate turns. Well, obviously, but a way to generate like you don't, so there's no surprises with Chaos Warrior, where like they're gonna put game on the board. Like you know how they're gonna put game on the board, right? They're either chaos monsters or they're gonna clear your back row and play the revivals or ring. So it's a predictable game plan where like I'll do again a lot of stuff where I'll soak up damage before and then start to scapegoat later when the game is a little bit more simplified because I know okay. So if you notice a lot of the games that I play scapegoats, I'll play it at a certain time where either I'm trying to protect my graveyard from Kaiku or I'm taking myself out of Ring of Destruction loss range. If it's Ring of Destruction for tie range, I might still hold on to it. But again, a late game scapegoat is 4 turns, but it's also could be monsters. It's insane. It's strong, right? And let me see. Game two is fairly simple. Game two is you bring in what you sided for. So now, right now, I'm siding Berserkerilla over Skilled Dark Magician because I don't care too much for the dark attribute, and I used to keep one Chaos Sorcerer in. I'm taking them both out right now because a lot of the games that I've lost Chaos Sorcerer was just even the one Chaos Sorcerer was sitting dead in my hand, and I'd rather have more chances to play. Like I don't. The worst thing is not being able to play. So there's different side deck strategies to implement, and right now with Chaos Control, I'm on beaters. So obviously the other Kaiku, the Berserkerilla, the third goats, the creature swap, extra defense, and dust tornadoes. Decree, I'm still not 100% sure if I want to bring them in yet, or if so. I really go back between dust tornadoes or decrees, but yeah, there's different strategies. Obviously, you can go from heavy battle traps and monsters, or some battle traps, negation or disruption with monsters, which I'm on, or you can go just disruption and stall, which Chaos Turbo used to be on with decrees and messenger. Uh, but again, it's like it's knowing how you want to play that certain matchup and knowing what cards to side in and out. Something you should already know going into a tournament, and how your deck changes when you're going first and second is a big thing because my side deck I think looks a little bit different if I'm going first versus going second. Also knowing what they bring in against you. So sometimes they leave their flips in, or they just bring in faith, which is very difficult to deal with. The good thing for you is you're definitely not going to keep a knock, although you have those cool plays with Tsukiyomi and then protecting their chaos monster. It's too much of a liability. The only reason I emphasize the game one is you have to make do with what you have. So with them bringing in faith, it makes it super difficult to deal with in that mid late game. If your face get knocked, I mean, like it's gonna happen, and if it takes theirs out of the deck, it's just, in my opinion, that makes it a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about anything coming back. But yeah, you'd rather have faiths going, and the good thing about like I see with chaos control is I have metamorphosis to answer face downs if there's ever there, or monsters, or I could maybe grab it, snag it with the creature swap, and again, dialing back to the point where now we have an added creature swap into the deck, making the Sinister even more synergistic with the deck. So when you're sided, it's implementing the game one strategy is still there. Now it's just easier for you to do that. Just you beat over their monsters, and you try to come over the top now, right? And where before you couldn't really, it's difficult to come over the top. Like you're coming over the top with just Tsukiyomi, or maybe Chaos Sorcerer or a Breaker, but now you have multiple turns to do so. And one of the things I like to implement a lot is I'm just gonna let me find this replay. This replay is against Calvin. I have two against Calvin. I can't remember which one. So this is Calvin Tahan, best in the world. I think this is when I was still playing Goat Control with Abyss Soldiers and Solemns. So maybe I'll show both. I'll fast forward this. So standard play. So Calvin is on not quite Chaos Turbo. Or I mean Chaos. It's not really even Chaos Warrior. It's just aggro. And I'm just using this matchup because a lot of this stuff still, or this replay, because a lot of the stuff are still relevant. So what kind of just happened here? Let's see. How did that go down? Oh, I booked it. So he's right now. I'm not in the greatest position here. Book. So game one is usually very, very difficult. I'm not gonna mirror force this here. So did I? Interesting that I drew duo and didn't play it. Easily could have been a maybe could have been a misplay there because I would have got rid of the breaker. But like, see, I have a lot of dead cards here, and like I need to buy turns. I think I chose not to duo because I wanted to buy as many turns possible, and I would soak up this damage. I know I have Mirror Force here too, but I really do not want to Mirror Force that, and yeah, barring something, oh, he draws heavy. Heavy, and I lose this game. That's okay. Like, a lot of the times you lose game one because, again, we're a slower deck, naturally a slower deck. Hope you can't hear this clicking. So game two, in this one, I sided extra battle traps and beaters. So Kaiku definitely wasn't in my main deck. He brought in Royal Command for some reason. So let's see if there's anything that comes up here. So I kind of get lucky having Sinister, but I lose one of my stronger plays in Sinister Morph. Oh, in Morph. So that's even worth it. That part was probably edited out, that fast forward, because I opened a different app on my computer. But yeah, we're trying to see if there's anything interesting that comes up here. So he books there. Level 2 comes down. Okay, here. So yeah, I instead of wasting, so this Abyss Soldier is my last play, right? I'm not gonna use it right now. Prioritizing Abyss with not prioritizing. It's valuing Abyss over everything over the other two is obvious here, but choosing what to put down isn't. So, like, maybe you could go summon Abyss Soldier, attack over, but the deco here, just being the aggressor is okay because you have this Sakuretsu, you have the extra battle traps. Snatch, you let that go. Draw. So this is the time you can put the Abyss down, because if there's no Torrential, you can get back your Dekoichi. So I would never priority in that position. Seeing what Calvin said there, nothing. So he hits the Saku. Again, I draw another Saku, which is awesome. Be the aggressor, because now we put him on a clock. We put him on a clock for next turn where Sinister's game. And if he tries to come over the top with the monster, we have a Saku. Solemns, I solemn, and just did bits. So I think it's game 3 that I wanted to highlight something here. So one thing that I'd like to do is I like to answer their monsters with monsters first instead of battle traps. Battle traps are your backup plan against them. If you can come over the top with monsters first, you definitely do so. So I played Calvin many times in many money matches and, well, luxury tournaments. So I'm kind of, I know during this time I'm familiar with what he brings in. So he goes first turn. So I rip breaker, which I obviously had to play here. Regardless, summon skill dart go over. But the reason I take this risk is even if I meet a Saku here, that means my skill dart doesn't get Saku'd next turn. Um, and I'm still over the top with monsters against them. Versus if I can manage to get this ahead by 2 cards where I go attack and then break, it's worth it. It's super worth it. So I guess it's knowing the matchup too. So game 2 you try to see as many cards as possible. But yeah, so see, I set Scapegoat here instead of Saku. This is like almost a year ago, this matchup. But the reason I set Scapegoat is to is just because I want to. I don't want to sack. I don't think I want to Saku anything on the first turn because if I want to use this as my backup plan because I'm beating over monsters with monsters. I'm not trying to Saku on an earlier turn. So he goes Kaiku, that's fine. So obviously he has nothing. So he doesn't even bluff a back row here because I think he saw me bring Dust Tornadoes and he finds value in a lot of the cards he has. And I might put him on all monsters. So if I put him on all monsters, it's hard for him to get a Blade Knight to come over the top here. So I know a lot of this still could have been different anyways if I went Skill Dark instead of Breaker instead of risking the Breaker. But like if that met a Book of Moon, I would rather lose my Breaker than my Skill Dark because I need to stay over the top and try pitch. So the reason I goat here is when I'm trying to simplify the game a little bit more and so I'm ahead in cards, and if I could trade a Scapegoat for another card in hand, and because he's not going to leave my goats. 100% he's not going to leave my goats. So I got to trade it for a Rhoda. So I know his hand is very monster oriented at this point. I know I'm showing both, but this is just from my perspective. I'm going to show both hands right now anyways. And it's easy to talk on this because it's my game. So I know to come over the top here. And then I set the widespread. Saku, I'm prioritizing Saku. Sets a monster. So again, he didn't shuffle hands. He just set a new card. I taught my own Warrior Lady. So he's forced to exile because he can't get a Blade Knight big enough, but even then he'll have to go through a back row. So I keep the pressure on because it's going to be hard for him to answer this. So if he tries to do that breaker play for me, I'm going to blow it up with the battle trap. Saku here. So one of the things I also want to indicate here is breaker almost never is like a +1 in the later mid games. And if you notice, no, he hasn't set any other spell and trap. So this breaker's effect was only super useful on the first turn. And choosing to prioritize Skill Dark over Breaker in the later game is much better because I didn't want to lose the Skill Dark to a book. So then now I'm super up, and like when I hide his hand, I just think those cards are dead. Like I might have a read on dead Chaos Monster or something, but they're just dead. Doesn't matter what the read is at that point. So he draws. Now tries to get a big Blade Knight over. And that one's done. Okay, so let me use maybe this one for an example. This was a recent game when I was testing. I'm also going to highlight my mistakes here too. So there's some games against Chaos Warrior that you just can't do anything. And obviously I'm gonna hide his hand. Show my hand. Fast forward, he goes pot. Set 3, set 2, Sasuke. So I make a huge mistake here by setting Dekoichi, because if he's summoning Sasuke, he definitely has an answer for a face down. Like that was just a terrible play, and the play was actually summon Tsukiyomi attack. Although it makes his Blade Knight live, we have to make the read that if he's willing to put a monster on board, he already has an answer for face downs. So would that have connected? Tsukiyomi definitely would have connected, and I definitely still would have been in this game. Show both. This huge mistake, I could probably play out this game, maybe not, but I just scooped because I messed up. And he sets 2 more. I don't want to bother playing this game. So I could go summon Sang and attack. It's just there's so much, and a lot of the times I think in my mind, yeah, I'm gonna lose game 1 to Warrior, depending on like the hand I have, and that's a hand I know I'm gonna lose. Why I spend any more time? Alright, so I'm picking this. I'm gonna hide his hand. So I have an okay, like a decent, I have a beater here and I had a protection, so I thought it was an okay hand. He goes pot again. Done. Forced to shoot this. There's no way I'm gonna let that connect. Dust shoots me. Lose the Sinister, obviously, because the morph play. So a lot of this is again, so I think in this video, I'm gonna highlight hedging your play and knowing what to prioritize. So Kaiku Snatch, tough. So again, this is not looking good at all, but oh, you guys see. So here, Suki tries to come down, tries to take that out, lose it to Saku, set book. Okay, so now is you have to indicate how you're gonna come back and win this game, right? So obviously it's the Chaos Monsters in hand, and barring drawing a Faith, you have to put yourself in a position where if I draw a Mimic, a Scapegoat, or something, like, or a Thunder Dragon, next turn I could summon a Chaos Monster, so I gotta make sure I still have the Dark and turn the Kaiku off. So yeah, rip Graceful. So obviously to come back, I'm gonna need a good set of cards here. So Saku, Ring, and Faith. So it's choosing what are the best cards to have, right? Obviously, if I go summon, this is fairly simple to break down the order of operations, right? Could I have an extra dark if I kill this dark monster? When I get my skill dark in graveyard, to summon both chaos monsters? Yes. But if this is a solemn, I'm not going to highlight over it. If it's a solemn, it totally breaks up this play. So I do have to give up the defense here and one of the chaos monsters. Because yeah, one, I could go summon the BLS first, try and attack through. But if it's met by any resistance, I probably am going to lose. So you find the play that can get, it's an obvious play, obviously. It's morph to try and bait. So now we're loaded, light dark. Attack, and then now we're ahead. Now he has to answer Fate. He has to answer Thousand Eyes. I have Ring, and I also have BLS for backup. I mean, it's standard. A lot of people would make that play here. So he gets this. Tribe, attack. So again, it's sequencing. You got to know how to sequence stuff against Chaos Turbo, or against Chaos Warrior, sorry. So summon BLS, obviously. So the reason I choose to ring first is in case that's solemn. What's the reason? I ring first and then summon in case that's solemn because it's or I'm trying to figure out the reason on ring. I guess I could have summoned first. I know I had a thought process of why I ringed first. Let's see. Let's just see where this breaks down. Smashing, like I have to get lucky here for him to not have any monsters because that deck naturally top decks monsters. I get a pot into 2-card Heavy Storm pretty much. And he draws the weakest monster that doesn't kill me. And then he doesn't drop his other monster because Torrential's still live. Sets a card. I rip a Kaiku. I mean, I should have died many times. He's not being able to draw out of it. So again, obviously I draw out of it here. Yeah, I lose Breaker. My hand is so strong against them. Obviously, okay, so here. I do the snatch play. I have so many different plays here where I do snatch first just to, like the Tsukiyomi would have gone through, but if I just went Tsukiyomi on Kaiku attack, but I kind of wanted to have the bigger monster. So I have, yeah, so much mileage out of the Tsukiyomi. Puts Kaiku on board. I take it only because I have so many answers anyways, and I could easily dump a light. And I don't want to put up the goats yet. Let's see what's met here. Waste the Mirror Force. Good with me. I take it again because now I can still go light dark with Faith and Thousand Eyes. So again, I like to come over the top with monsters. Smashing Ground's fine. I go now because I don't want to die. I don't want to be put in ring range. So again, over the top. This is my backup plan because again, like I say, game 3, it's meant to answer if they brought in flips, if they brought in a chaos monster or something. So, I mean, it's obvious, right? Again, don't answer. Again, I'm not answering monsters with traps. I'm trying to come over the top with monsters first, or with my plays, and using these as backup. So now we do it here. Meets a book. I'll probably get mileage out of this Mirror Force. But he exiled the right thing. Attacks. There's no point in killing it off. He knows what it. Oh, sorry. Why do I kill this off? Because I think I want to tribute for Thunder Dragon next turn. That was my original play. And now I'm still okay with this because the Mirror Force is still gonna, unless he rips a Breaker or a Storm, get a lot of stuff. And rip Tsukiyomi, play good cards. Berserkerilla would have been crazy at that point too. Berserkerilla is probably better. Yeah, gotta put him on a dead Chaos Monster here, for sure, if he's not sending it or summoning it. And now all my good cards are starting to come, and you know how this game's gonna wrap up. I'm not dead in ring range. Obviously, I don't make the creature swap for the Kaiku play when he called it, because I'm saving. I always like to have an answer for a face down, just in case the Faith comes. He brings in Faiths. Smashing, dust, and just a duo just to see what the card is, and it's right there. This was Thunder Dragon Chaos Control against Calvin. I don't want to make this video too long. I got a lot of my points across already. Oh, here against SD Alkilla. It's game 2 where I talk about getting into overcomplicated game states, and this is gonna take way too long to show you guys. I'm gonna go through. I'll do it through YouTube. These guys have been doing a good job documenting this team more. Steel Killer. This one, yeah, it was a long game, but 2-hour game. Sorry, let me mute this. So game 2 is the hour game, and what ends up happening here is so you can't really see it, but we get into the super over complicated game state, and I tried to X that. Where I think the heavy, obviously I can't click the grave here. I'm here, but I can't click the grave where Heavy Storm is already burnt, and he just kind of pieces me together because he has more stuff. But yeah, this is the difficulty in that overcomplicated game state that I was talking about, and it's evident here. Luckily for me, I won game 1, so there's a lot that I could show, but I think I made my point across already, and I got my point across. And yeah, I'm gonna continue to drop a fair amount of like improvement tips on how I got better, and how I'm still pretty successful at Go Control or Go format, and how to get you guys to the next level, how to improve your game. And yeah, my next video is probably going to be maybe from the Warrior standpoint versus Warriors, that I'm going to bring on one of the premier Warrior players to do that. And yeah, content that I have coming in the improvement series probably. I know Scully puts polls up there for you guys to suggest stuff, or maybe he puts it out there and you guys vote. And there's a lot of stuff like talking about overcomplicated game states on when you each have 6 cards in hand and 3 set, how to navigate through that. That's a video that I could do. How to make reads. Obviously, a lot of people want to do that, want to learn that. So thank you for subbing to the Patreon from everyone at GoFormat.com. We appreciate the support, and keep playing. Thanks, guys.